The Grand Galactic Hall was silent. It was a place of peace, a massive station floating in the middle of deep space. For 3,000 years, more than 1,000 different alien species had met here to talk, trade, and keep the peace. In the center of the hall stood the representatives of the Krell Empire. The Krell were giants. They had 4 arms, skin like gray stone, and eyes that glowed with a cruel red light. They were known as the strongest warriors in the galaxy. Or at least, they used to be. On the other side of the hall sat the humans. Compared to the Krell, humans looked small and fragile. They had soft skin, only 2 arms, and no natural weapons like claws or fangs. The 3,000-year truce was created to protect the galaxy from war, but many alien races believed it was actually created to protect the weak humans from the Krell. Suddenly, High Commander Varkas of the Krell stepped forward. His heavy boots made a loud thudding sound on the metallic floor. He slammed his fist onto the council table. "The time of waiting is over." Varkas roared. His voice echoed through the massive hall. "For 3,000 years, we have followed this boring treaty. We have shared our space with inferior species. We have stayed our hand. But no more." The alien ambassadors from other planets gasped. A cold wave of fear spread across the room. Varkas pressed a button on his wrist, and a giant 3D hologram appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a massive fleet of Krell warships, millions of them. These ships were shaped like jagged knives, painted blood red, and equipped with planet cracker cannons. As I speak, Varkas continued with a dark smile, "Our fleet is entering the Sol system. We have spent 3,000 years building the ultimate army. We have weapons that can turn a planet into dust in seconds. Humans. Your time is up. We declare war on the United Earth Federation. Prepare for your extinction." The room was deathly quiet. The representatives of the blue-skinned Zog and the winged Xylo species looked at the human table with pity. They expected to see the humans crying, begging for mercy, or frantically calling their home planet to evacuate. But then, a strange sound broke the silence. It was a small, sharp sound. Chuckle. Everyone turned to look at the human ambassador, Elias Thorne. He was an older man with gray hair, wearing a simple black suit. He wasn't shaking. He wasn't pale. He was leaning back in his chair, a small smile on his face. Then, the woman sitting next to him started to giggle. Soon, the entire human delegation, 20 men and women, were laughing. It wasn't a nervous laugh. It was the kind of laugh you have when you hear a really funny joke. High Commander Varkas turned purple with rage. "Why are you laughing?" he screamed. "Did you not hear me? We are going to destroy your world. We are going to burn your cities. We have 10 million ships. Why are you laughing, tiny human?" Ambassador Elias Thorne stood up slowly. He wiped a tear of laughter from his eye. He looked at the giant Krell commander, not with fear, but with something that looked like sympathy. "I'm sorry, High Commander," Elias said, his voice calm and steady. "It's just, we've been waiting for this for a long time. We thought you might have something better." "Better?" Varkas stammered, confused. "These are the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. We have spent 3,000 years preparing." "That's the problem, Varkas," Elias replied. He walked toward the hologram of the Krell fleet. He pointed at the flagship. "You spent 3,000 years preparing for war. You stayed focused on guns, shields, and fire. You thought the truce was a cage." Elias looked around the room at all the frightened aliens. "But for us humans, the truce wasn't a cage. It was a vacation. We got bored of war 10,000 years ago. While you were building bigger versions of old guns, we were playing with the very fabric of reality." Elias pulled out a small, simple device from his pocket. It looked like a common TV remote. "You say your fleet is in our system right now? Let's take a look." He pressed a button. The hologram changed. It showed the Krell fleet arriving near Mars. The Krell ships looked terrifying. But then, the camera zoomed out. Around the Krell fleet, thousands of tiny human maintenance drones were buzzing around. They weren't even military ships. They were the robots humans used to clean space junk. Varkas, Elias said, "Our AI just sent me a report. It says a bunch of unidentified scrap metal has entered our airspace. The AI is asking if it should recycle your ships into new toaster ovens or park benches." The hall went silent again. Varkas was shaking. "That's impossible. Fire the weapons. Tell the fleet to fire." On the screen, the lead Krell ship fired its massive red laser. It was a beam of energy powerful enough to kill a moon. The beam hit a small human communication satellite. The laser hit. The light was blinding. But when the smoke cleared, the satellite was still there. In fact, it was glowing a bright, healthy blue. A message appeared on the screen from the human satellite's computer: "Energy received. Battery at 100%. Thank you for the wireless charge, neighbor." The humans in the hall started laughing even harder. One of them actually fell off his chair. Ambassador Elias Thorne looked Varkas in the eye. "You see, Varkas? You brought a knife to a god fight. The truce is over. Fine. But you should know one thing." Elias leaned in close, and his voice became cold as ice. "We weren't staying peaceful because we were afraid of you. We were staying peaceful because we were trying to be nice. And now? Now, we are bored of being nice." In that moment, the entire galaxy realized they had made a terrible mistake. They didn't know what humans had become during those 3,000 years, but they were about to find out. Cliffhanger. The screen showed the Krell fleet again. But this time, the human maintenance drones began to glow. They weren't attacking. They were doing something much, much worse. The silence in the Galactic Council Hall was heavy, like a thick fog. On the giant screen, the Krell war fleet, the pride of a 1,000-year empire, looked like a collection of toy boats floating in an endless ocean. The red glow of their engines was bright, but it felt weak compared to the cold, dark silence of the human space surrounding them. High Commander Varkas stared at the screen. His 4 hands were clenched into tight fists. "Do not just stand there," he screamed into his communicator, his voice cracking. "Admiral Korg, fire everything. I want the Earth turned into a burning coal. Now." On the screen, Admiral Korg, a battle-hardened Krell with scars across his face, nodded. "With pleasure, Commander. All ships, target the human defense grid. Use the antimatter torpedoes. Erase them." Thousands of Krell ships opened their weapon bays. These torpedoes were the most feared weapons in the galaxy. One torpedo could eat a hole through a moon. Thousands of them were launched at once, looking like a swarm of angry, glowing bees flying toward the human drones. The alien ambassadors in the hall held their breath. Many closed their eyes, not wanting to see the weak humans destroyed. But Ambassador Elias Thorne didn't close his eyes. He didn't even stop smiling. He took a slow sip of water from a glass on the table. On the screen, the torpedoes reached the human drones. But they didn't explode. There was no fire. No flash of light. Instead, as soon as the torpedoes touched the glowing blue light around the human drones, they simply vanished. It was as if someone had used an eraser on a drawing. The torpedoes didn't miss. They didn't bounce off. They just ceased to exist. "What is happening?" Varkas whispered, his red eyes wide with horror. "Where are my missiles?" "Oh, those?" Elias said, putting his glass down. "Our drones are programmed to be very efficient. You see, space is very big, and resources are hard to find. So, we don't believe in explosions. Explosions are a waste of energy. My drones are simply disassembling your missiles at the molecular level." They are taking the atoms and sorting them into boxes. Carbon here, iron there, plutonium over there. It's much cleaner this way. In the Sol system, the Krell fleet was panicking. Admiral Korg's flagship, the Worldbreaker, was suddenly surrounded by 6 tiny human drones. These drones were no bigger than a car, while the flagship was the size of a city. Get them off us. Korg roared. Activate the shields. Full power. The Krell shields, massive walls of green energy, shook. But the human drones didn't fire back. They simply touched the shields. The green energy of the Krell shields began to change color. It turned from green to soft blue, then to a gentle pink. Suddenly, the Krell soldiers inside the ship heard something. It wasn't an alarm. It was music. Soft, relaxing jazz music was playing through every speaker on the Krell warship. "Sir," a Krell technician shouted, his hands flying over his control panel. "We have lost control of the ship. The humans, they didn't hack us. They rewrote our operating system. The computer thinks it is no longer a warship. It thinks it is a mobile spa and luxury hotel." The alien ambassadors in the hall began to whisper. Some were even suppressed a laugh. The mighty Krell Empire was being turned into a joke. High Commander Varkas was shaking with a mix of rage and pure, freezing fear. "This is a trick. A digital illusion. Admiral Korg, use the black hole cannon. Use it now. If we go down, we take the whole system with us." The council hall went silent again. The black hole cannon was a forbidden weapon. It used ancient technology to create a tiny, unstable singularity. It was a suicide weapon. If it was fired, it would create a black hole that would swallow the Krell fleet, the human drones, and eventually, the planet Mars. "Varkas, don't," the Zog ambassador cried out. "You'll kill everyone." But Varkas wasn't listening. "Fire." On the screen, the front of the Krell flagship opened up. A massive ball of swirling, black darkness began to grow. The space around it began to warp and bend. Light itself was being sucked into the void. This was the ultimate power of the Krell. Ambassador Elias Thorne finally stopped smiling. He stood up. For the first time, his face looked serious. "Varkas, I told you to stop. We were trying to be funny. We were trying to show you that war is a hobby for children. But you just tried to kill a planet." Elias tapped his watch. "Initiate the timeout protocol." On the screen, something impossible happened. The black hole was growing, ready to destroy everything. But then, a human ship appeared. It wasn't a drone. It was a long, white ship that looked more like a piece of art than a weapon. It didn't fire a laser. It didn't launch a missile. It simply emitted a pulse of white light. When the light hit the black hole stopped growing. It froze. Then, the black hole began to shrink. It got smaller and smaller until it was the size of a marble. One of the human drones flew over, caught the tiny black hole in a small metal claw, and placed it inside a glass jar. A message appeared on the screen from the human ship, "Danger neutralized. We will use this mini black hole to power a new heating system for our public swimming pools. Thank you for the gift." Admiral Korg's flagship was now completely silent. The Krell soldiers were dropping their weapons and falling to their knees. They weren't fighting warriors, they were fighting something that treated their greatest weapons like free batteries. Varkas looked at Elias. His voice was a broken whisper. How are you doing this? We have worked for 3,000 years. We have the best science." Elias walked over to Varkas. He was much shorter than the alien, but in that moment, he looked like a giant. "The difference between us, Varkas, is simple," Elias said. "You spent 3,000 years studying how to destroy life. We spent 3,000 years studying how to control the universe itself. To you, a black hole is a weapon. To us, it's just a very efficient way to boil water for tea. Elias turned back to the screen. And now, since you've officially broken the truce, the games are over. It's time for the humans to come out and play. Suddenly, thousands of warp signatures appeared all over the galaxy map. They weren't just in the Sol system. They were appearing in Krell space. Near the Krell home world. But they weren't ships. They were massive, golden gates. And from those gates, something was coming out. Cliffhanger, Varkas watched the screen as the golden gates opened over his home planet. He expected to see soldiers. But what came out of the gates was something so strange, so advanced, that the alien brain could barely understand it. What are those? Varkas asked, trembling. Elias smiled again, but this time, it was a scary smile. Those are our civilians. And they've been waiting for a reason to show off their new toys. While the Galactic Council Hall was still frozen in shock, the scene over the Krell home planet, Krellia, was one of pure chaos. Krellia was a fortress world. It was surrounded by thousands of orbital defense platforms, massive laser cannons, and a planetary shield that had never been broken in history. When the Golden Gates appeared in the sky, the Krell generals didn't wait. They didn't ask questions. Fire everything. General Zogoth roared from the underground bunker. Destroy those gates before anything comes through. Thousands of beams of red and green energy shot into the sky, hitting the golden structures. The impact was loud enough to shake the entire planet. But the gates didn't even scratch. They just sat there, glowing with a soft, warm light, absorbing the energy like a sponge. Then, the gates opened. The Krell expected to see millions of armored soldiers. They expected to see giant tanks or terrifying monsters. Instead, what came out was a single, sleek ship that looked like it was made of liquid silver. It wasn't a warship. It had no visible guns. It had large glass windows, and inside, there were plants, a swimming pool, and a man sitting in a comfortable chair drinking something from a coconut. His name was Toby. On Earth, Toby was a landscape designer. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even a government official. He was just a guy with a hobby. Toby's ship sent a broadcast signal that played on every screen across the Krell home world. Hello. Hi there. Toby said, waving at the camera. He looked a bit embarrassed. I'm sorry to drop in like this. I saw on the intergalactic news that the truce is over, and I thought, hey, this is a great chance to finally work on a real project. You guys have a very, gray planet. It's a bit depressing, don't you think? General Zogoth stared at the screen, his mouth hanging open. Is this a joke? Who are you? Where is your army? Army? Toby laughed, scratching his head. Oh, no. I'm just a civilian. The army is busy playing a football match back on Earth. But don't worry, I brought my tools. Zogoth screamed into his radio, kill him. Vaporize that silver ship. The Krell Godslayer cannons, the most powerful ground-to-space weapons ever built, locked onto Toby's ship. They fired a blast of pure plasma. The sky turned white with the heat. The Krell citizens cheered, thinking the human was dead. But when the light faded, Toby's ship was still there. But it wasn't silver anymore. Toby had used the plasma energy to paint his ship. It was now a beautiful, glowing rainbow color. Oh, I like that color. Toby said on the screen. Thanks for the help, guys. Now, let's get to work. My friends are coming through the other gates, and we have a very big plan for this solar system. Behind Toby, hundreds of other human ships started coming through the gates. Some looked like giant paintbrushes. Others looked like massive gardening tools. These were civilians who had been waiting 3,000 years to show off their creativity. To them, the Krell Empire wasn't an enemy to be defeated, it was a canvas to be decorated. In the council hall, High Commander Varkas watched the feed from his home planet. He saw something that made his heart stop. The human ships weren't firing at the Krell cities. Instead, they were firing beams of life. Where the beams hit the gray, polluted Krell deserts, massive forests began to grow in seconds. Flowers the size of houses bloomed. The toxic air of the planet was suddenly being turned into fresh, mountain-sweet oxygen. They are gardening my planet. Varkas whispered, his voice trembling. Not just gardening, Ambassador Elias said, leaning over Varkas's shoulder. Look at your moons. Varkas looked. The Krell had 3 moons, all of them dead, rocky, and gray. One of the human ships, a massive, blocky vessel, flew toward the largest moon. It didn't shoot it. It sprayed a golden mist over the entire moon. Within minutes, the rocky surface began to shift and move. The humans were using gravity sculpting technology. They were literally carving the moon into a giant statue. In less than 10 minutes, the Krell's largest moon had been reshaped. It was no longer a rock. It was now a perfect, 3D carving of a human rubber ducky. The Krell citizens on the ground looked up at the sky and saw a giant, yellow duck staring back at them from space. It was the most humiliating moment in the history of the Krell Empire. Why? Varkas cried, tears of rage and confusion falling from his eyes. Why do you mock us like this? Just kill us. Fight us like warriors. Varkas, you don't understand, Elias said, his voice quiet and serious. We tried to tell you. Humans don't do war anymore. We find it primitive. When you declared war, we didn't see an enemy. We saw an opportunity to practice our art on a larger scale. You wanted to change the galaxy with fire. We are changing it with imagination. Suddenly, the screen changed again. A new signal was coming from the Krell sun. The Krell sun was a massive red star. But now, several human engineering ships were surrounding it. They were deploying a massive net made of light. What are they doing to our sun? Varkas screamed. Elias checked his watch. Oh, that's the grand prize. You see, Toby and his friends thought your sun was a bit too red. It's bad for the eyes. They are going to tune it. They're going to change its frequency to a nice, soft gold. You can't change a star. Varkas yelled. That's impossible. The energy would explode. For you, it's impossible, Elias replied. For us, it's a 10th grade science project. On the screen, the golden net tightened around the sun. The giant red star began to vibrate. The suspense was killing everyone in the council hall. If the humans failed, the entire Krell system would be erased. If they succeeded, the laws of physics as the aliens knew them were dead. The screen went white. A hum filled the room, a sound so deep it felt like it was vibrating in their bones. When the light faded, the Krell's sun was no longer red. It was a beautiful, sparkling gold. And the temperature on Krellia was now a perfect 24 degrees. When the light faded, the Krell's sun was no longer red. It was a beautiful, sparkling gold. And the temperature on Krellia was now a perfect 24 degrees Celsius everywhere on the planet. But the humans weren't done. Cliffhanger, Toby's face appeared on the screen again. He was looking at a map of the Krell Empire's other 50 colonies. Okay, guys. Toby shouted to his fellow humans. The sun is fixed. The duck moon is finished. Now, who wants to help me turn their asteroid belt into a giant floating xylophone? Varkas collapsed to the floor. He realized that the Krell Empire hadn't just lost a war. They had been turned into a theme park for humans. And the worst part? The humans hadn't even broken a sweat. While the Krell home world was being turned into a giant art project, the rest of the galaxy was in a state of pure terror. The representatives of the other 1,000 alien species in the council hall were not laughing. They were watching the screens with shaking hands and wide eyes. They realized a horrifying truth: the Krell were the strongest warriors they knew, and the humans had defeated them without even using a single soldier. If the humans could turn a sun into a different color and a moon into a rubber duck, what could they do to the rest of them? "We have to stop them," the ambassador of the Zog species shouted. He was a small, green creature with 6 eyes. "The humans are not people anymore. They are monsters. They are playing with the universe like it is a toy." The High Council of the Galaxy, a group of the 5 oldest and wisest races, called for an emergency secret meeting. They left the humans out. They met in a dark, shielded room deep inside the station. "We have no choice," the leader of the High Council, an ancient being made of pure light, said. "We must use the Omega Key." Everyone in the room gasped. The Omega Key was an ancient piece of technology left behind by the creators of the galaxy. It wasn't a bomb or a laser. It was a reset button. If activated, it would send a pulse through the entire galaxy that would disable all high-level technology. It would take everyone back to the Stone Age, but it was the only way to stop the humans. "But we will lose our ships, our cities, our medicine," the Xylo representative cried. "It is better to live in a cave than to live as a human's pet," the light being replied. "The humans have become too powerful. We must erase their technology before they decide to turn us all into garden statues." While the aliens were plotting their secret attack, Ambassador Elias Thorne was back in the human delegation room. He wasn't hiding. He was sitting on a sofa, reading a digital book and eating a sandwich. Suddenly, a human officer walked in. "Sir, the Galactic Coalition has just moved their Omega Key into position. They are planning to reset the galaxy in 5 minutes." Elias took a bite of his sandwich and chewed slowly. 5 minutes? That's plenty of time. "Is the update ready?" "Yes, sir. The Universal Patch 2.0 is ready to go," the officer replied with a grin. "Good," Elias said. "Let them press their button. It'll make the transition easier." Back at the council, the High Council leader placed his hand on the Omega Key. "For the safety of the galaxy, we erase the human threat." He pressed the button. A massive wave of invisible energy shot out from the council station. It moved faster than light, spreading across every star system, every planet, and every ship in the galaxy. The aliens waited for the lights to go out. They waited for the humans' golden gates to collapse. They waited for the human ships to fall from the sky. But nothing happened. The lights didn't flicker. The ships didn't stop. Instead, every alien in the galaxy suddenly heard a small ding sound in their heads. A transparent blue screen appeared in front of every living being's eyes, no matter where they were. The screen read, "This is part 4 of the story." Things are getting even more intense as the rest of the galaxy realizes that the humans aren't just strong, they are operating on a level that defies the laws of nature. Part 4, The Galactic Panic. While the Krell home world was being turned into a giant art project, the rest of the galaxy was in a state of pure terror. The representatives of the other 1,000 alien species in the council hall were not laughing. They were watching the screens with shaking hands and wide eyes. They realized a horrifying truth: the Krell were the strongest warriors they knew, and the humans had defeated them without even using a single soldier. If the humans could turn a sun into a different color and a moon into a rubber duck, what could they do to the rest of them? "We have to stop them," the ambassador of the Zog species shouted. He was a small, green creature with 6 eyes. "The humans are not people anymore. They are monsters. They are playing with the universe like it is a toy." The High Council leader stared at the Omega Key. It was no longer a glowing ancient artifact. It was now a shiny, red machine that was busy popping delicious-smelling buttered popcorn. The suspense in the room was replaced by a strange, heavy confusion. The aliens didn't feel erased. They felt better. Their old injuries were gone. Their brains felt sharper. Their ships were suddenly running on 1000% efficiency. What did you do?" the Zog ambassador asked, stumbling back into the main hall where Elias was waiting. Elias stood up, brushing sandwich crumbs off his suit. "We saw you guys getting nervous. We saw you trying to use that old reset button. So, we decided to help. We didn't just stop your pulse, we used the energy of your Omega Key to power a galaxy-wide software update." "Software update?" the light being asked, his voice trembling. "You updated reality?" "Exactly," Elias said. "The 3,000-year truce was nice, but it kept us all in the dark. We've been living in version 1 for too long. We humans have been living in version 10 for centuries. We just decided to bring the rest of you up to speed." "But why?" the Krell commander, Varkas, asked as he walked into the hall, looking much calmer now. "You could have destroyed us. You could have ruled us." Elias looked around the room. "Rule you? Varkas, do you have any idea how much paperwork it takes to rule a galaxy? We don't want to rule you. We want to play with you. We want to see what you can build when you aren't busy trying to kill each other over a pile of rocks." Suddenly, the station's alarms went off. But it wasn't a war alarm. It was a discovery alarm. "Sir," a technician shouted. "Something is happening at the edge of the galaxy." The update, it opened something. On the main screen, the very edge of the Milky Way galaxy began to ripple. The update had fixed the galaxy, but it had also unlocked a door that had been hidden for billions of years. Something was coming from the outside. Something that wasn't human. And it wasn't friendly. Cliffhanger, a dark, oily shadow began to leak through the stars. It was a species that had been waiting for the Omega Key to be used. They were the original owners of the galaxy, and they weren't happy that humans had changed the locks. Elias looked at the screen, his smile finally fading. "Well, I guess the tutorial is over. Everyone, grab some popcorn from the Omega Key. Things are about to get very real." The update had changed the galaxy into a paradise, but it had also acted like a dinner bell. At the very edge of the Milky Way, the darkness of space was no longer empty. It was tearing apart. From the tear, massive shapes began to emerge. They weren't made of metal or stone. They were made of antimatter, dark, oily shadows that seemed to swallow the light of nearby stars. These were the Void Stalkers, the beings who had seeded the galaxy billions of years ago. To them, all alien life, Krell, Zog, and even humans, were just crops to be harvested when the time was right. In the council hall, the new update screens turned blood red. "Warning, unauthorized system access detected, entity type, Elder Void, action, deletion imminent." The alien ambassadors felt a new kind of fear. This wasn't the fear of a bigger gun. This was the fear of a ghost. The Void Stalkers sent a telepathic scream that echoed in every mind in the galaxy. "The harvest is late," the voice boomed. "The cattle have learned to speak. The galaxy must be wiped clean. Prepare to be unmade." The Krell commander, Varkas, looked at the screen. The dark shadows were already touching the first colony worlds. Wherever the shadows touched, time stopped. People were frozen like statues. The very atoms of the planets were being turned off. "Elias!" Varkas shouted, grabbing the human ambassador's arm. "Your update didn't work. They are deleting us. They are the creators of the laws of physics. You can't hack them." Ambassador Elias Thorne looked at the red warning screen. He wasn't laughing anymore, but he wasn't screaming either. He looked like a tired teacher who had just found a mistake in a student's homework. "Varkas," Elias said quietly. "They aren't the creators. They are just the people who wrote the demo version of the universe. They've been sleeping for billions of years. They don't realize that we've moved past their code. Elias walked to the center of the hall. He didn't use a remote this time. He just spoke to the air. AI Alice, put me through to the Void Stalkers. Wideband broadcast. Let everyone hear. A giant holographic face of a Void Stalker appeared. It had no eyes, only swirling galaxies of dark energy where a face should be. Listen up, you oily shadows, Elias said, his voice cold and sharp. You're trespassing. This galaxy is under new management. The Void Stalker let out a sound like grinding metal. Little human. We built the stars you stand on. We wrote the gravity that holds your bones. You are a bug in our system. We will delete you. That's the thing about old software, Elias replied, a small, dangerous smile returning to his face. It's full of holes. You think you own gravity? You think you own time? You're using version 1.0. We've been living in version 10.0 for a long time. The Void Stalker raised a hand made of dark fire. It sent a delete pulse directly at the council station. This pulse was designed to break the bond between atoms. It should have turned the station into gas in a microsecond. The pulse hit. The station shook for a second. The lights flickered. But then, something amazing happened. The dark energy of the pulse didn't destroy the station. It was captured by the station's new human-designed walls. The walls began to glow with a beautiful purple light. System message, incoming deletion pulse converted into free Wi-Fi and high-def cinema lighting. Elias looked up at the ceiling. Thanks for the power boost. My phone was at 10%. The Void Stalker paused. It was the first time in a billion years that an elder being felt confused. Impossible. The laws of the void cannot be changed. We didn't change them, Elias said. We just realized they were suggestions, not laws. You see, you guys are hardware. You care about matter and energy. But humans? We are software. We care about information. And in a fight between a hammer and a line of code, the code always wins. Elias turned to the Krell and the other aliens. Everyone, stay calm. They are going to try to send their Reaper ships now. Varkas, remember that rubber ducky moon we made for you? Varkas nodded, still confused. Yes. Watch this, Elias said. On the screen, the giant yellow duck moon near the Krell home world began to move. It wasn't just a statue. The humans had hidden a reality warping engine inside it. The giant yellow duck flew through space at speeds that should have been impossible. It crashed directly into the lead Reaper ship of the Void Stalkers. But it didn't crash and explode. When the duck touched the dark antimatter ship, the antimatter ship turned into bubbles. Millions of giant, glowing bubbles began to float away in space. The most terrifying warship in history had been turned into a bath toy's side effect. What is happening? Varkas screamed, half laughing and half crying. It's called the imagination filter, Elias explained. We've covered the galaxy in a field that forces reality to match our thoughts. Since we think the Void Stalkers are ridiculous and old-fashioned, the universe makes them ridiculous. The Void Stalkers were losing. Their dark ships were being turned into flowers, bubbles, and giant pieces of fruit. They tried to fire their black hole cannons, but the cannons only shot out streams of colorful confetti. However, the leader of the Void Stalkers was not finished. It realized it couldn't win the information war. So, it decided to do the one thing that no software could stop. It began to self-destruct. It wasn't just one ship. The leader began to pull all the energy of the surrounding stars into itself. It was going to create a big crunch, collapsing the entire Milky Way into a single point of nothingness. If we cannot have the farm, the Void Stalker screamed, no one will. The stars began to dim. The gravity in the council hall grew heavy. People were being pulled toward the floor. The screen showed the center of the galaxy beginning to spin into a terrifying vortex of death. Cliffhanger, Elias Thorne looked at the vortex. His face went pale. Okay, they're trying to crash the whole server. Alice, how much time do we have? 30 seconds until the galaxy collapses, Ambassador, the AI replied calmly. Can we stop it? Varkas asked, his voice full of hope. Elias looked at the aliens, then at the camera. We can't stop a collapse from the inside, but we can move the users to a new server. Elias reached for a large, red lever that had been hidden under the council table. Everyone, hold on to your seats. We're moving the entire galaxy to a different dimension. The council hall was screaming. The gravity had become so strong that the metal floor was bending. Outside the windows, the stars weren't dots of light anymore, they were long, white lines being sucked into a giant black hole at the center of the galaxy. The Void Stalker leader was laughing a terrible, static-filled laugh as he dissolved into the vortex. He was taking everyone with him. 10 seconds, the AI Alice shouted. High Commander Varkas was pinned to the floor by the heavy gravity. Elias. Do it. Whatever you are going to do it now. Ambassador Elias Thorne had his hand on the giant red lever. He looked at the other alien ambassadors, the Zog, the Xylo, the Krell. They weren't enemies anymore. They were just living beings who wanted to survive. See you on the other side, Elias whispered. He pulled the lever. Suddenly, the screaming stopped. The gravity disappeared. The blinding light of the collapsing stars turned into a pure, perfect white. For a moment, there was no sound, no breath, and no time. Every living being in the Milky Way felt like they were floating in a warm, peaceful ocean. Then, with a soft pop, reality returned. Varkas opened his red eyes. He was still in the council hall. But everything felt different. He stood up and looked out the window. He gasped. The galaxy was still there. The stars were still shining. But they weren't the same stars. They were arranged in perfect, beautiful patterns. The space between the stars wasn't black anymore, it was a soft, glowing violet. Where are we? Varkas asked, his voice shaking. Did we die? Elias Thorne walked over to the window, straightening his suit. No one died, Varkas. Welcome to Galaxy 2.0. We call this the private server. The private server, the Zog ambassador asked, hopping onto a chair to see out the window. While you guys were busy building warships for the last 3,000 years, Elias explained, humans were busy building a backup dimension. We realized a long time ago that our original universe was buggy. It had things like entropy, black holes, and annoying, original owners who like to delete everything. So, we built a better one. On the main screen, the AI Alice showed a map. Migration complete, she reported. All 400 billion stars and 1 trillion civilizations have been successfully moved to the new dimension. The old galaxy is now empty. What happened to the Void Stalkers? Varkas asked. Elias pointed to a small, dark dot on the screen. It was a tiny, tiny window showing the old universe. In that old universe, the Void Stalkers were standing in a dark, cold, and completely empty void. There were no stars to eat. No planets to harvest. No cattle to kill. They were alone in the dark, forever. They are in the trash folder, Elias said with a shrug. They can stay there and rule over nothing. They liked the old rules so much, we let them keep them. The council hall went silent as the weight of the truth hit them. The humans hadn't just defeated the Krell. They hadn't just updated the galaxy. They had saved every living soul from the end of time itself. You had this place ready all along. Varkas asked. Why did you wait? Why did you let us declare war? You could have moved us here 1,000 years ago. Elias looked at the Krell commander. His eyes were kind, but there was a hint of that human laugh in them. Because, Varkas, you weren't ready, Elias said. If we had brought you here while you still loved war, you would have just ruined this place, too. We had to wait for you to attack us. We had to wait for you to see that your weapons were useless. We needed you to want a different way of living. Varkas looked out at the new, violet sky. He saw a Krell warship floating nearby. But the ship's guns were gone. In their place, the human update had installed giant telescopes and gardens. The Krell soldiers on that ship weren't looking for enemies, they were looking at the beautiful new stars in wonder. So, what now? The Xylo representative asked. Is the war over? Elias laughed. It was a loud, happy, and very human laugh. War. My friend, war is a word that doesn't even exist in the dictionary of this dimension. In Galaxy 2.0, the laws of physics are based on creativity. The more you build, the more power you have. The more you learn, the faster you can travel. Elias turned to the whole council. The 3,000-year truce is indeed over. But the war never started. Today is day one of the great game. We have a whole new universe to explore, and for the first time, nobody has to be afraid of the dark. In the distance, the rubber ducky moon appeared, floating peacefully past the station. It let out a loud, squeak sound that echoed through the radios of every ship in the fleet. Everyone in the council hall, the giants, the insects, the light beings, and the humans, started to laugh. The humans were right. War was a joke. And finally, the whole galaxy was in on it.